Excuse me. Let's get bot in here. Get our Discord notice sent out. And walk on screen. And we should be good. So, hello everyone, this is Chris Ingerson, and it is September 17th, and this is the September 17th TextQuest Devstream. So, today we're going to be going over feedback from Pixel Pop this past weekend. So, last weekend I made a trip out to St. Louis, Missouri for Pixel Pop Festival, which is a smaller scale but pretty nice convention for independent games. It was very enjoyable. Had a good time interacting with a lot of developers from the Midwest. Quite a bit of people that I've gotten to know over the years, actually. So I'm starting. It's kind of nice to be able to go to conventions and recognize. Probably, I want to say a good anywhere between a third to half of the people at the convention. I've seen their games and interacted with them before. It's kind of nice to get that sense of familiarity with the developers in the area. Anyway, there's a lot of great games there. I had a really good time, and TextQuest was very well received. I had a couple of people say that it was their favorite game of the convention. So that was, as always, that's a very nice ego boost. That definitely helps me stay on track. Helps me, keep going. It's always nice to have that bit of validation. Anyway, so I have, it was actually a pretty relaxed amount of notes that I got. I only got, let's see, about 5 pages worth of notes, which is about half of what I usually do. Usually I have about 10 to 15. But on the whole, the build was stable. Didn't have any crashes. Didn't have any breakpoints. So we're definitely getting up there in terms of stability for our builds, which is good. In fact, at this convention, I was able to confidently walk away from the table for extended periods of time, and it was not a problem. I've set up the demo to basically have a reset after I think about it's either 1 minute or 1.5 minutes of inactivity. The demo will just reset back to the title screen, which is great for conventions. It means that I do not have to helicopter around my booth to make sure that people are properly quitting out to the main menu or finishing the demo. So that's pretty nice. But there are a couple of notes that I have, and there's also one big, not big, but there's one notable feature change that I have made, and that is interactions with doors. So this is a feature not really a request. This has been a feature suggestion for quite some time now. I've resisted it because I wasn't sure how it would feel, and I was worried that it wasn't so much that I wasn't sure how it would feel. I had a pretty good guess on that. It was more that I wasn't sure if that would be the preferred action for most people. It does seem to definitely be the preferred choice for people. I got a lot of feedback talking about it, and just watching people interact with doors kind of made this make sense. And that is when, let me go ahead and maximize on play. So when you open doors, one of the most common things that people used to do is they would type open and then they would just hit W trying to go forward. But the input menu is still up. So now we changed it so we do this. It's a little awkward. You can see that it kind of does this bit of jumping motion up at the top and then it comes back down instantly. That's not ideal. We're going to change that today. That's going to be one of the things we work on. But having this interaction where typing open just basically closes the input menu and allows you to move forward is actually pretty nice, and it's pretty reliable that if you open a door, then you are most likely going to want to close the input menu because people are just going to want to move forward after opening the door. So we're going to try to clean up that interaction a bit. I kind of hacked together some code to get that to work, which is why it looks so ugly. But that's something that I would like to put in there, get that polished up and nice and going, just because it seems to eliminate some frustration points when interacting with doors in particular, and it just cuts out an unnecessary button press. Because before, I always chalked it up to, if you wanted to do that, you would just be comfortable enough to hit enter twice. So like this, that was going to actually be very hard to do. Basically, it would be something like, I'm not sure how I can do this without. You'd be typing like this and just hitting enter twice to do it. But it's one of those things that is. It's a usability feature that I think more people will enjoy if we do it this way. So it makes more sense just to have it close like that. Pretty straightforward. So go ahead and close that. We are going to. So that's the main thing that I would like to do today. There are a couple of other things that I would like to do just for niceties. So I've noticed that players, when they are first interacting with the game, it seems to be about a 70-30 split on this. Most players will instinctively try to type things when they are walking down that hallway. So when they get to the staff, the scepter at the end of this hallway, they probably about 60 to 70% of players will just try typing something. But there is a notable minority of people that will just kind of do this, see this, and then they'll like try to do stuff like this, and then they'll hit escape and walk away. They won't try to interact with it. So I think what we need to do here is, instead of having pressed escape to close, what should happen is that should say something like type something, and then once they type something, after that initial bit, it will switch to this message. That will help us deal with any sort of. So the reason that I had press escape to close is because I didn't want people to get locked in here. Before I had this, it wasn't uncommon for people to be like, I don't know how to close this. How do I get out of this? And they would try like typing exit or close or something like that. But after adding this, it became much more apparent people would actually hit escape. But now they don't really know necessarily that they need to type something. So I think having it just be initially presented as type something, and then after your first input, it switches over to press escape to close or whatever the other hints are going to be. I think that will help streamline that and make it a lot more apparent for players. But anyway, to get started, let's go ahead and start working on the door. So this is the hacked together code that I set up. Basically on open, when interacting with a door, we will call, let's unlock, here we go. We basically call close UI delay, which is just a coroutine that waits one frame and then closes the input view. And actually, while I'm doing this, I'm going to go ahead and say get view input view dot close. So that's super interesting to me. Let's go ahead and go to definition. And yet it's instant. How interesting. I'm just not sure why it's kind of hard cutting, it seems to be. In any case, so the reason that we had this enumerator, I don't actually want this, but we had to have this because if we tried to return without, or if we tried to, let's see, where was it? So if we go ahead and comment this out, and I'm just going to say UI.getView input view dot close. So if we do that, instead of calling that coroutine, we'll actually get a null reference. And that's because the parser is pulling interaction information from the input menu, which, now that I think about it, I bet I could change. So here's what happens on submit. Here we are. We send off our receive input, which is based on this. Well, I'll just go ahead and we're gonna let that compile, and then we are going to run through real quick, show you what happens when we try to open the door. It's going to throw a null reference exception, and we'll kind of move backwards through the parser to figure out what's going on. I tried to take a stab at it during the convention, not like during hours, but after hours when I was back at the hotel, and it was complicated enough that I didn't want to really do it on the fly like that. There is a fair amount of error log when that happens. So let's go ahead and play here. Oh, and also we are coding today, obviously. Okay, so I'm going to come up to here. Oh, and one of the other things that I do need to worry about is, well, actually, maybe I... So there's our argument out of range exception. Go ahead and stop that. One of the other things, just real quick, I want to point out, with the way this currently is... Okay, never mind. We do have a else here. I was a little worried that this would not work when we were transitioning levels via doors, which is something that only happens in later levels. The first two levels do not have that as a concept. Well, you could say that technically we do have a door that transitions levels, but it's not actually a door. It's just an interactive object with an event listener attached to it. Anyway, so let's go ahead and we're going to take a look at this and try to trace it back to our error line. So let's go to parser. We go to parser 639 to start. Drag that over. 639. Excuse me. All right, 39 is right here. So we're saying for all of the direct objects in our output sentences, the fact that this is nulling out is not great. Let's see. Actually, it's not nulling out. I guess it's... Is this an oversight on my part? Output sentences of I. That implies that output sentences has been cleared up somehow. Interesting. Well, let's go ahead and spool through it again. So then we go to parser 446. 446 right there. And then we're going to 353. Right here. And then we get to 330. Right here. Then 307. Right here. Okay. And then 307, input view 284. I don't know why I did that. 284 is just our received input. Okay, 126, and then 632. So 126. Right here. What? Well, that's clearly not right. And 632. 632 base dot update. Huh. That wasn't what I meant to do, but sure, why not? How curious. Alright, well, let's go ahead and let that go. I'm going to turn on parsing. Man, I wish I remembered what that was. Parser debug. There we go. Okay, so we can go ahead and set that up. I'm going to do it robustly because I want to know exactly what's going on. Go ahead and pause here and clear this console. I guess actually I should probably do this here. Okay. So we are going to get all the way through here. That's a lot. Let's go ahead and stop playing. All right. Interacting with self, hand, lurking guru, and door. That's interesting. It's called room door? Huh. I guess that must be its first name. Okay, apparently not. It's just called room door. Super weird. That's very interesting. Checking cheats, checking homages, receiving input open. We are resetting the parser. We're setting sentence, setting conjunctions, conjunction count 1, number of sentences 1, setting joint words, checking verb identities, commands, validating sentence, setting verb, verbs been set to open, validating conversation. It is not a conversation. Setting determiner. No determiner has been set. We have our quantity, which is set to 1, direction, which is set to nothing, direct objects, there are none. We don't have an object null, so we are setting direct to first interacting object. Direct objects have been set to door. Okay. So here we go. This is all of our information here. And then we reset parser, start sentence, output 0. I think 0, that's just a indexer, so that should be 0. Yeah, that makes sense. Outputting result for door. Sentence output is opening. Resetting parser, and then this. Parser 6, 3, 5. Right here. This is in what function? This is in the set multiple sentence function. Okay. This is very intriguing. It's almost as if this is getting called through twice. So let's pop back over here to the door. Here's what happens right here. One, I did not set this to return, so this is going to go all the way through. It's going to go to output result, which if we go to definition is basically calling output result, which calls the parser, I believe. So we're going to go ahead and do this. Yeah, we see parser.output result, which we don't necessarily want or need. Like there's no reason to output a result when we are already closing the menu. So, and all output result does is basically log this to the input view. So, interesting. Why would... So section settings, I now know a much more efficient way of doing this. So that's very curious. So 635. I'm going to go ahead and put in a debug here. So output sentences of I has to be greater than the total count there, which is very curious actually now that we think about this, because so output sentences of I here is already checked for its direct objects count right there, which means that this all has to happen while that's being evaluated? Interesting. Well, let's continue with this debug log. Okay, so we're going to say outputting sentences for direct object. Well, no, outputting sentences for format. Copy this, and we're going to say I guess. Okay. Before we do that, let's go ahead and come back up to here. If sentence is validated, we're going to go ahead and come down here and say robust debug. If robust debug, I cannot say that. Robust debug. Blah. We're going to go ahead and say find a sentence with a subject. So for this, we're going to go ahead and say directive object D is equal to this. So that's actually true. No subject found. I think that's true. I think that's the state we want. Outputting result for let's do this, and then we're going to go ahead and say output sentences dot count. That makes sense. I guess this should be I plus 1, just to make that a little bit more in line. So let's try running through here again and seeing what happens. Okay. Well, while that's going on, let's see. Are there any other big things I would like to work on today? A few more people get stuck on the curtains puzzle in the castle, and I'm just it's kind of frustrating. There are a couple of minor revisions that I want to do to the castle and sewer levels, but both of those revisions require totally retexturing it, which is like a lost day of productivity of just UV, which sucks. It's several hours to re-UV that stuff. Fortunately, that's not going to be a problem going forward because I'll be modeling with ProBuilder more. But as it is, I'm going to be doing this in Maya, which is making things a little more difficult. In any case, okay, so bug. Okay, so we're debugging robustly. So we have outputting sentences for 101, outputting sentences for 0, no subject found. Sentences opening, resetting parser. Wait, hold on a second. Timeout. How on earth are you getting here again? Are you firing twice? Oh. Oh my. Could that be the case? Okay, I'm going to go to, real quick, go over here to input view, and we're going to put a debug into on submit. Because, so here's the thing. So if we're listening for submit, then hitting enter is going to call on submit, which if it passes nothing would probably cause problems. So what we should do here is I'm going to come up to on submit, on submit. So close wrapper does get called. Go ahead and say submit. Do. I guess we'll put that down here. Okay, and then we're gonna go ahead and go to close, which does call close wrapper, which does set in is listening for submit to false. So that shouldn't matter, but let's see what happens here in terms of our evaluation. Okay. So we're gonna run through here again real quick. And I'm not going to turn this on yet because I want to test that theory. So I'm going to say open. Okay, so that does only get called once. Huh. Okay, so let's go ahead and I'm going to jump back over here to door, and I'm going to call return after this. Just because we don't actually want it to do anything. This and on submit here, is it doing anything weird? Say start carding select delay on submit, which that would cause a problem, but it shouldn't be too Hmm. So I'm not really seeing. Let's pop back here. We'll turn on robust debugging again just to see. We don't have collapse on, so interesting. How on earth could that be? The only thing I can think of is that it's been reset while that's happening. So let's go ahead. So let's parser debug do clear this. Okay, so we're gonna see what happens when we type open here. Oh, interesting. That one we didn't even get a door to open with. So let's see here. We only have the one submit for open. We don't have any other time. Start sentence output 0. Okay. So let's go ahead and pop back here. I'm gonna get rid of you. I'm gonna go to our parser. And 635 was where this failed. So right about here. So output sentences. Do we modify this at all? Yes. You are a static list, which means that it could be getting cleared. Okay, we're going to go to find all references here. Which implies that's what is happening. Because we have resetting whole parser and then we get our problem. That makes sense. When it fires once, it would basically clear that list, which would mean when we try to do a comparison on the next for loop to evaluate it to fall out, it would fail. It would throw that error. So that means bad things. Ugh. That means it's clearing when it shouldn't. Or it means that I should restructure this so that I'm passing that along instead of modifying it directly. Oof, that complicates things so much. Okay. Is it really all just concentrated there? So it's cleared out and clear. It exists there. That's the bulk of it. And when we finish parsing, we call output sentences dot refer, or dot add sentence. So we do that there. That's not necessarily needed. Okay, so it might make more sense to set that up to pass instead. So here's the problem. Let's drill down real quick. So we get to here. Cache verb does not equal no. Okay, so the direct objects don't count. There is no subject, which means that we need to basically go through here, and that's not true. We know that there is a subject because we're in this for loop. So we get to here. We set our phrase. We go to definition here. That calls do verb or check verb, which on our door is right here. Sorry, one more up. Check verb, which itself calls check verb. I think it basically loops around until do verb gets called. And then when do verb gets called, we go to close, peak definition here. There we go. There's our total reset right there. Okay. That means that we don't want that to happen. Yeah, that complicates things. So, oh dear. Oh man, are we going to get into unit tests? Oh, we might get into unit tests. We're probably going to get into unit tests. Yeah, we're going to get into unit tests. Cool. So, that's a thing. Let's go to Window, Test Runner. I believe this is natively integrated as of this version. It's really hard for me to remember. Okay, so we are going to write a few unit tests to get our editor in check. I'm not actually sure if these all work anymore. Well, they seem to, so cool. So that's the editor. That's the edit time stuff, but we need to have this for our runtime as well. So interacting with objects, that's going to complicate things a lot, but it'll be doable. Okay. So I say that we're going to get into that, but may very well not. So let's see. What do we want to do here? Well, let me think. Okay. So the problem is that close calls reset, which gets us borked in a loop. So okay. So before we get into this, we're gonna switch real quick to oh man, I don't know if I want to do that on air. So I think we're going to switch over to the type something message that I was talking about. So having it basically be that when you interact with something, it will say type something, and then you can just after you type something in, it'll switch over to saying press escape to whatever. So in this case, instead of saying press escape to close, it would say type something, and then that would change back to press escape to close after you entered something for the first time. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to close that. I'm going to go to input view. We're going to get rid of view. I guess that makes sense. Okay, so we're going to get rid of that. And I'm going to scroll up to here. Text to show in the placeholder label after the cycle ID set to true. Okay. So this is going to be a little different. We're going to say find all references. So placeholder. So that's done on opening. All right. So we're going to go to definition here. So this is going to actually be a little different. We are going to go up to here. Actually, before we do that, let's go ahead and go down here to select delay, which is probably just in the base class, isn't it? Scroll delay, clear workflow routine. Of course it is. So we're going to go ahead and move all the way up to here. We're going to go to text quest view, go down here. We're going to make this a virtual. Oh, good. We already did. We're going to come back over to here. We're going to scroll all the way down. Let's see. That's on update, on awake. So we're going to come down here. We're going to say override. Select delay. And we're just going to go peek here. We're just going to go ahead and copy all of that, basically. Okay. I'm going to do that. And after we select the field, we are going to go ahead and say set placeholder message. We're going to do that. And then we're going to come up to here. Tooltip. Protected. Go ahead and say serialize field. Tooltip. Protected string default. We'll say default interaction placeholder. Wow, what a terrible name. Default interaction text is equal to type something dot. Text to show on the preview label when initially interacting with an object. Okay, so we're going to go down to here. We're going to go down to placeholder text. This is where things are going to get fun. We're going to go ahead and scroll down to here. Open. Here we are. So instead of calling this, we are going to do this. Hold on. So I need to go to find all references. I know this is going to cause a huge problem. Interactions is what I want. Interactions. Okay, so we're going to look for interaction, I believe, is the script. .cs. All right. So on interact, we're going to go ahead and do all this fun stuff. Blah, blah, blah. Open from interaction. Okay, that's the thing that I actually want. So we can instead... What is going on here? Something's really important. Here we are. So we can keep that. Move this. And we are going to call open. And then I am also going to go ahead and say placeholder label dot text is equal to default interaction text. Okay. Pretty straightforward. So let's go ahead and let that compile. So now what should happen is when we don't interact with anything and we just pull up the menu, it should show us that standard placeholder text that says press escape to close or any of the arrow commands. But if we're interacting with something, it will initially say type something, and then after that, it will refresh the placeholder text every time you input something. So that'll be That'll actually be helpful in a multitude of ways, just because one, it means that now every time you input text, you'll get a different placeholder that will give you different information. And two, it also means that when you're interacting with something, you have um, or rather, when you pull up the input menu, you have an immediately visual way of knowing, are you interacting with something, yes or no. Um, Granted, it's not explicitly told or explained to the player that that's what it is, but over time, I think that will become more apparent. So, for example, here it should just say press escape to close. Good. And then if I come over here to the scepter, okay, so that did not work. What about you? And how about you? Okay, so none of that worked. Well, la di da. So let's go ahead and go to open, which I see actually goes down to here, which just calls open true, which then comes up to here. Okay, so we get to set placeholder message. Peek that definition, placeholder label text. That should be the case. I see. So let's go ahead and I'm going to say debug.log placeholder label.text. I'm going to go ahead and come down to here. I'm going to go to set placeholder message, go to definition, and then after this, I'm just going to go ahead and paste that. I'm going to go ahead and add a quick little bit of a component here. Scroll all the way up to here. That. Okay. Let's see that again. So, not entirely sure what happened there. It should have pulled it up. I could have... Well, no. Even if it was menu controls, let's look that up real quick. Menu controls. Of course, you're not doing anything. Menu controls. Right here. Open interaction. I see. That's calling open. Let's see for submit. Get view. Pause. View is open. Ah, here we are. Interact. So we do call that. Ah, right. Okay. That is unfortunate. Callback right here is a bit of a problem. Hit container is equal to no. Open from interaction. Input view. Callback does get invoked either way, which is very problematic. That is annoying. Maybe it wouldn't matter. Ugh. Open inventory, open help, and open. Very, very vexing here. Let's go ahead and pop back over here. I'm going to go over to here. Let's just see if it's getting invoked at all. Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and do that. Pause. Let's see what happens. All right. The invoke callback must be happening before or after, even though it technically gets invoked before. So let's find out. So this is done through input view 6. I'm sorry. So this is 437 to start. 437, which is going to be that line. And then that goes to input view 637. 637. Shoot. Okay. I guess we're going to change that. So we're going to go ahead and come over to here. So we're going to move that. We'll also stop this. I shouldn't have it be in that coroutine. Instead, I should have that be in the onSubmit function. That was my problem there. Submit is somewhere right here. Okay. Select delay. I guess we'll put it right here. So let's go ahead and see what that looks like. That also makes sense just because now that means we're not going to be shuffling that twice every time we hit submit. Or every time we open the menu, it's just going to happen once. Okay. Okay. So, let's go ahead, hit play, and try this again. I'm about to make a Corpse Bride reference there. I don't know what's up with me, but I feel like quoting movies apparently tonight. All right, we got something. And do. All right. And do. All right. Do. Cool. Nice. So we have that working. So now when you interact with something, it will say type something. Let's make sure that it actually changes. So we're going to say take. Nice. There we go. If we say hit. Eat. Awesome. Cool. That's a little jarring, but it's okay. Actually, you know what? We can even smooth that out a little bit, can't we? Shoot. I'm not crazy about that. Time out. Okay, that works. Shoot. Alright, so I have to do this. If menu root not active self. So if not that. Likewise, that's going to happen here. Okay. So that should deal with this particular issue. Let's go ahead and let that go. Oh, actually, also before I forget, let's go to find all references here. Go to here. Okay, making sure that basically if you hit enter to close it, to close the menu, it doesn't also shuffle that at the time because that would be pointless. Work with me, Unity. All right. So let's go ahead and clear that and try this again. With regards to my unit testing that I was kind of mumbling about earlier, I think we're going to end up not doing that on the air just because I need to go through a lot of setup. Well, but it might be interesting to show people how to do that on air. So let's do this, and this. Okay, that looks good. How about you? Oh. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. That's not going to work, is it? Bleh. Alright. Crud. That means I have to do this. we're going to change this to if refresh placeholder text. So if the menu root is not active, then we can turn it on. Otherwise, we're going to have to set it to be active. Why actually is that a thing? That's not what I want to do there. I did that backwards. I apologize. We're going to go ahead and do this, hit that. I'm going to move this up to here because it's actually not supposed to go in open. It's supposed to go in open from interaction. We're going to go ahead and come up to here. We're going to just paste that right there. And then we're going to go ahead and come in here and make this like that. Okay, simple as that. Let's go ahead and let that compile and see how it handles it. So, something that I've needed to do for a long time, but I have actually not been comfortable with unit testing, is write unit tests for my parser. It would be an enormous asset for me to have unit testing on the parser because I will essentially be able to set up test cases, like very specific test cases, to run every time I make an edit to the parser. I can just hit, run unit tests and make sure that everything goes through. That is going to be somewhat difficult, but it is going to be doable. Oh boy, it's going to really mess with me trying to get that. So we're going to go ahead and clear this. Play. Mostly because making tests for those things, it might require a bit of a restructure of the parser, which I think we might have to do anyway to get around the open issue. So let's go ahead and come over here, type something, escape close. Okay, okay, so hitting enter there. So you don't work anymore, which is very interesting, and it's because we do that. Shoot! Dang it. So that won't work on enter. It'll work on E and click, but not on enter. That's very annoying. Okay, let's do this. It's equal to this or true. Obviously, that's going to evaluate to true all the time. But that's not actually what I want to do yet. The thing I want to do is when we call open, there should be this coroutine here. The move coroutine. There we are. Dang it. Okay. No, hold on. Frack. Man, that sucks. Okay, so that means I have to do this very nasty chunk of code. Or mathf.inverse lerp from input area. Nope. Area. Nope. All right. Where's my rect transform? Input grid. If I had to guess, that's what it would be. Yep. That's not it. Really? So it's just root transform. Ugh. All right. So I'm going to come back up to here. Yep, that's just going to be super awkward. It is very weird to me that the error line is registered as way down there. So we're going to go ahead and say root transform dot anchored position dot y. So that's going to be the value at the end here. And we want to say between hidden position and visible position dot y, and then dot y. So we're going to say, or this is less than, we're going to say 0.1f. That's incredibly generous, but that should basically take care of that. So let's go ahead and let that compile. So that is a very cheeky way of me basically saying if it's off screen, it's okay to refresh, because at 0.1, it shouldn't really be visible. It should still be mostly off screen. We will double check that in a second, but that should allow it to basically say if the root is inactive or if our oh man, you know what? I just realized that I could probably just do this in a much more easy way. No real reason for me to do it this way. So we go back to really menu controls was way over here. Whatever. Yeah, why do I even need to call back here? Oh my goodness. Interact is all done with the purpose of opening this up, so why bother with this? I can just say null. Oh. No, actually, that is pointless. Instead, what I can do is I don't see why we need to call this here. And that lets me come back to here and just do this. So I don't think there's a reason that I need to have this callback here, because basically we say if this, then we're going to open it up. If this, then we're going to open this up. And otherwise, we're just going to open this up anyway. Either way, we interact with things. And then otherwise, we'll call our callback. So that all makes sense. So I don't need to invoke this callback here, because that's just doubling up what I'm doing. Okay, so let's go ahead and let that compile. And we're going to run through that and try it. All right, let's go ahead and clear that. Okay, so go ahead and let this play. And then we should have it functioning now, so that once again, if you open up the menu and you're not interacting with anything, it'll just say whatever excuse me, the dialogue is. And then if you are interacting with something, it'll say type something. Oh. Oh, man. That's why I had it. So if you press H, it's supposed to bring up help. But if you do it while this is going on, it's not going to show you anything. Frack. Yeah. So that means I don't get a choice. Gotta do it that way. Bleh. I hate doing that. All right. Let's see. While that's compiling, are there any other big things that would be nice to work on? Look. VSync apparently doesn't seem to be working, but I'm not entirely sure if that's because of the hardware I was showing off on. I'm using a MacBook Pro laptop, which is not exactly the pinnacle of um, power. So it could be that it just didn't have enough juice to get through VSync. It could have also been because I have two separate monitors open, my laptop's monitor and my main monitor that I show on the floor with, and they might have different refresh rates, and it's possible that VSync doesn't know what to do in that situation. Okay, so let's do this. Yeah, okay. There we go. So yeah, 0.1 seems to be enough. You can see that it just says press escape to close as long as we kind of juggle here. Unless we let it go all the way down pretty much, and then it will say type something. So that's okay then. Let's go ahead and stop that. So let's see. Got some aesthetic changes that I need. Well, not aesthetic. I have some level design changes or level revisions I need to make, but that's not quite something that we can do tonight. All right. So unit testing, I guess, is the next thing that we should work on. So runtime unit tests. Huh? So this is parser editor. Parser test right here. Okay. So I guess I'm going to create a separate folder here called runtime. I'm going to rename this as well. So this is sleepyhound TextQuest editor unit tests. Is going to be what we do here, which is going to cause a bit of a re-import, and then I have to do it again when I rename it. So that's gonna be fun. And we're going to have a unit test utility class that we have to make. That's going to be outside of this, so that's also going to be fun. Let's let that compile, should it choose to do so. Come on. I know you can do it. All right, so I'm going to make this TextQuest editor. Unit tests. Okay, we're going to go ahead and apply that. I'm going to go ahead and create a folder. I'm going to call this utility. Create. I guess I can't really do much there. It'll get there in a second. You can do it. All right. So we're going to go ahead and create C# script. This is going to be parser runtime tests. I'm not entirely sure why that brought this up. Unless it's going to ping me to try and compile. That was weird. Actually, given the fact that I'm... Oh, man. Right. That's going to reload project files. Given that I'm going to be doing some assembly stuff, I need to close that so it'll be a little bit smoother for me. Every time, if you have Visual Studio open and you start adjusting assembly definition files, then it has to unload the project and reload the project, which takes time. But if Visual Studio is closed, you don't have to really worry about that. Unity just kind of does it on its own. All right, so we're going to go ahead and, dang it, of course, I didn't make it a test script. I just created a regular one. It should have been a testing script. Let's go ahead and delete that. We're going to force another re-import. Ugh. Okay, well, while that's going on, I guess I can talk through some of the theory on this. So Unity has, since 2017, had this thing called a test runner. And what it does is it basically allows you to run unit tests inside of Unity in a very convenient fashion, which makes it very easy to test tiny bits of your code systemically. So for what I'm going to do here is basically I'm going to create a bunch of small scale tests to test specific functionality with the parser. So it'll be stuff like interacting with an object and getting a specific response or getting a specific output that we would expect. So for example, if I'm interacting with a door and I type open, then one of my tests would be this thing that we're working on right now, which is, does it close the UI menu and does it open? Although that might actually be too complex. A better example would be if I type open, does it get to the open output? All right, so we're going to go ahead and create testing, play mode test script. I'm going to call this parser runtime tests. Okay. And while that is going, we're going to have to create an assembly definition called sleepyowl.textquest.unitTests. And that's because, so there are two different ways that you can run tests. One is called edit mode tests and one is called play mode tests. Edit mode tests are tests that are run directly in the editor. They don't have to launch play mode. They just kind of run. Play mode tests are a lot more complex. Oh man, am I really going to have to restart the editor? Oh, that sucks because I have to, write runtime things. All right, let's do this thing, I guess. Boy. I apparently need to restart the editor now. So I'm going to do that real quick, I guess. Oh, man, and of course I didn't even open up the script before I closed it. I could have been typing at least. All right. So the reason that we have to have this be a play mode test is because the parser is not meant to run in the editor, and therefore it will not do so. And that's just a matter of basically protecting the parser class because a lot of it's static and there could be weird states that it could get into, and that's just uncomfortable for everyone involved. So we're going to go ahead and close this. That seems to work. That's also going to increase the size of my builds, which is weird, but sure, why not? All right, so I'm going to go ahead and we're going to create assembly definition. I'm going to call this sleepyowl.textquest.unitTests. Man, I really hope that's what I called it, not unit tests. Good. Okay, and of course that's going to require us to let it re-import, and then we have to adjust this and hit apply, and then let it re-import again. Assembly definitions. So much fun. You can do it. I don't really believe in you, but I know you can do it. All right. So what we want to do here is we want to mark this as only something that works in the editor. There is no reason to have this function anywhere else. It's a test, so it doesn't need to be included. We are going to include cpl.common. We'll also go ahead and include cpl.common.editor. We'll also include TextQuest and TextQuest editor. Okay. Let's go ahead and apply that. And then the next thing we need to do is utility. And if I was smart, I would have done utility first. I'm not smart, however, because now I have to add a new reference to both this and the editor version to the utility, because I'm, like I said, not very smart. So let's let that compile. It should come out just fine. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and say create. I'm going to say C# script. We're going to say text quest unit test utility, or perhaps I can just call it unit test utility. Or how about TQ unit test utility? That's pretty good. All right. Just one more, I swear, and then we'll be fine. Come on, I know you can do it. I believe in you, kinda. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and say create assembly definition, and this is gonna be sleepyowl.textquest.unitTests utility. Bleh. All right. So this, we can go ahead and do this actually before it does anything else. Let's just try this while it's compiling. See if that breaks anything. Okay. So with all that set up, we can now actually start work on our utility. So we have to have a utility because I need to be able to instantiate things at runtime and then interact with them. Because all interactions are, all interactions are, well, based on interacting with an actual object. So, man, this is going to be super weird. All right, we're going to give this a chance to finish compiling. All right, so let's go ahead and open this up. Finally get around to that. I'm also going to go ahead and open up runtime tests. And while I'm here, okay, so now I can come back over to here. I'm curious to know if that's going to interrupt me at all. I kind of feel like it will, but we'll find out. Scriptable object. I'm going to say create asset menu. File name is equal to this. Menu name is equal to that. Let's say sleepy owl. Text quest. Text quest. Unit tests. Test utility. Okay, this is going to be TQ unit test utility. Oops, go ahead and get rid of that. Okay, so this is going to get interesting. If you've seen me do any sort of editor scripting regarding settings before, this is going to be pretty familiar, but if you haven't, We're just going to go ahead and say class containing references to objects used in unit tests. Runtime unit tests. We're going to go ahead and say using Unity Editor. And then we're also going to go ahead and say, so this is going to be public class, blah, blah, blah. We're going to go ahead and say private static TQ unit test utility instance is equal to null. And we're going to go ahead and say public static TQ unit test utility instance. And then we're going to go ahead and actually, I'm just going to make this private again. So we're going to say get we're going to return instance, and then before that we're going to say if instance is equal to null. Then we're going to go ahead and do this. So we're going to say string GUIDs is equal to asset database dot find assets, and then we're going to say do t colon and then plus type of TQ unit test utility dot name. This is a slightly better way of looking through a project that I found than just hard coding a string. So what this is going to do is asset database is a Unity editor class that lets you handle assets in the editor. Find assets is basically the code version of typing into the search bar in the inspector window or in the project window. So you can see there's the create button there and then the search bar. Find assets is like typing into that search bar, so you give it a string. T colon is the shortcut command for find me something of the type, and then we're giving it the name, which is a string value of the TQ unit test utility. In the past, I would have manually typed it out like that. Oops, like this. But by doing it this way, where I say plus type of blah, 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 if I ever choose to rename this class, I don't have to worry about that. It'll just automatically update itself, and then it's fine. So anyway, find assets returns a string array of GUIDs for the assets that are found. So we're going to go ahead and say if GUIDs.length is greater than 0, it means that we found more than one asset. Usually there's only going to be one. We're going to go ahead and say, if that's the case, then we're just going to say instance is equal to asset database dot GUID to asset path, and then asset path. Oh, I'm sorry, I did that wrong. So we're going to say asset database dot load asset at path, and then TQ unit test utility. And we're going to give it this asset database.GUID to asset path, GUIDs of 0 here and here, and there we go. So that should load it in, set it up as our instance, and now we have this utility class that we can assign values to in the editor, and in our unit test scripts, we can just kind of pull those values now. We don't have to worry about creating them. So that means that we can now go up to here. I'm going to go ahead and just say serialize field, tooltip, blah, blah, blah. We're going to say private interactive. Oops. Right, that's not going to work yet. So we got to let that go. Parser runtime tests, let's go ahead and set this up. So we don't need to worry about this, I don't think. So we don't really need this. I guess we can work with it in void functions. That won't be too bad. So do we still have things like teardown? Okay, good. Teardown setup. All right, so teardown is going to be the more interesting thing. So what teardown does is it's an attribute that you put onto a function, and as you can see, it basically gets called after every test, and it lets you do things like clean up your scene so that previous tests do not affect the current test. So that's very useful for what we want to do. It becomes somewhat problematic, but I think we'll be okay. Mostly because each test is gonna have a kind of different thing that it has to evaluate. So we'll see if we can get that to work the way I Um, so what we're going to need to do here is I I don't think we'll need the coroutine ones. Actually, we might be able to get away with just doing a void function. So we're gonna say test. We're gonna say our author is me. Then our what's my other thing that I want to do there? It's description. I think yeah. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and call this. Um, what do I want to do here for this test case? I suppose it should be for the. I'm trying to think of a good test case for our parser. Um, doing a basic input would be fine. So let's go ahead and say examine test. Let's go ahead and clear this. We're going to come over to here. I can't do anything with this yet, so I actually need to. So we're going to say tests if a or if an interactive object can frack. Test if an interactive object can. Yeah, this is going to get problematic. Be examined. So for this, I would have to. It's going to go in this order. To do spawn object. Set interactions. Send input. Evaluate results. So I guess actually this is going to be assert results. So the problem with this is that I don't have a way to really assert anything in my parser. Which is extremely problematic. I can. Well, maybe it's not. Okay. So let's go ahead and come back to here. I need to assign a reference to sleepyowl.textQuest. Barely managed to get that in there. Let's go ahead and apply that. So I need this reference to sleepyowl.textQuest in my utility because I need to be able to reference interactive objects. So we're going to go ahead and let that compile. We're going to come down to here. Do. We're going to go ahead and just say private interactive. Oh, you son of a. You're going to kill me. You didn't compile. Did you? So we'll give that a second. Okay. Oh, you've got to be kidding me! Oh, right. Duh. So this is in the text quest. Of course not. Sleepyowl.text text quest unit tests using sleepyowl.textquest. And let me see. Interactive. Of course not. Because something is going wrong here. I don't think that it's interacting with sleepyowl.textquest at all. this unit test. I think something went wrong. Which is quite interesting. So you are here. Let's go ahead and throw in a reference to sleepyowl.common just to kind of have that be in there, and that should force it to cleanly recompile. I'm curious as to why it's not showing up. It's not exactly great. Okay. So we'll let that finish compiling. I do apologize for all the compiling, by the way. When you're setting up unit tests, there's a fair bit of loading bar time. Let's go ahead and let that finish. There we go. Cool. So you're not doing anything. Are you working at least? This is going to be namespace sleepy owl. Yeah, okay, so this one's working. Textquest dot unit tests. We can kind of keep these things, and then we're going to go ahead and say interactive object. Cool, so you're working. Is it because you're in the editor? Or you're not in the editor? Is that why it's doing that? Because that's super weird. Let's go ahead and close this. I have a hunch that it's not building the DLLs correctly. I don't seem to have any errors, do I? No. Let's go ahead and open this up and see if that forces a recompile. Okay, here we are. There we go. So yeah, it was just Visual Studio's being stupid and not updating. So we're going to call this interactive object. This is going to be our examine object is equal to null. We're going to say test object used in examine tests. We're going to come down to here, and we're just going to say public interactive object examine object. I'm going to say get return instance does not equal null question mark instance dot examine object, otherwise we will return null. Okay, pretty straightforward. And then from here we can run over here to runtime tests, and then we're just going to say, we're going to do this. We're going to say interactive object examine IO is equal to instantiate game object dot instantiate. We're going to say tq unit test utility dot examine object. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and just say examine io dot on dot verb success. Oof. Okay, so that's actually where we're going to need that. So we're going to go ahead and move this into our coroutine down here. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this. Plus equals delegate. This is going to be a verb, I think, and success event is, oh, you know what, I'm actually just going to go ahead and change these while I'm in here to update these to be a little bit better. So success event is going to be system.action dupe and verb duped. Okay, so that makes it a little bit more apparent when we hover over this what it's supposed to be. Find all references. We can get rid of you. Speak event is going to be pretty much similar thing. Wait event is going to be, that's just going to be a very easy thing to do. Okay. And then word event is going to be this monstrosity. Okay. Find all references, find all references, find all references, get rid of you. Makes things a lot easier. No. Come back over to here. That makes it a lot easier for me to know what my delegate is supposed to be. And we're just going to say interactive object, IO, verb, verb. Okay, come down to here, and you know, yeah, okay. So we're just gonna go ahead and say bool. Hold on, give me a second here. Continue is equal to false, and we're just gonna say continue is equal to true. Oh, can't call it that right. Wait is equal to true. I'm gonna say wait is equal to false. And then we're just going to say while wait. Do that. And in addition to that, we're going to go ahead and say verb type. Verb type is equal to verb type dot take, I guess. And then we're going to say verb type. Oops, come on. Verb type is equal to verb dot type. Oh no, it's verb dot verb, right? Okay, and all we're going to do here is we're going to say assert dot r equal, and we're going to say verb type dot examine, and then verb type. Okay, pretty straightforward. And then what we're going to want to do is, actually, I'm going to go ahead and change this. Oof. So we're going to say examine io dot verb success minus equals. Ah, man, that sucks. Okay, I hate doing this. I hate assigning or unassigning anonymous delegates. So we want it to be. Yeah, screw it. It's just going to be is equal to delegate. Or will you not let me do that? Nope, you will not let me do that. Cool. So we're going to go ahead and do this then, I guess. Bar callback is equal to this. Man, that complicates things drastically. Okay. Hmm. To an implicitly typed. I suppose then I could make it a method. Or would it be a function? Perhaps a delegate? I guess that would kind of make sense. So let's try this. Private void I guess I would call this like verb callback. I actually forget how I do this. There we go. So public delegate void. Okay. So let's go ahead and do this. Can I just do this as delegate? Delegate void callback? Can I convert an honest method type to void because it's not like a delegate type? Fine, we're just going to do this. So private delegate void verb callback is equal to new. Man, I keep forgetting how to do this. It's been too long. Void word event. Okay, so let's try this again. Delegate void. No. All right, yeah, so it's going to just be easier for me to do that. So delegate void callback, and then interactive object IO verb to delegate. So that's totally not what it is, right? It's just a declaration. So I just do this. So we're going to say, okay, verb callback. There we go. It's equal to callback. And then we can just say, oh, man. So is it this then? System.action interactive object verb. Is that what I need to do then? Okay, that works. So I can just do that. Sorry, I've never actually done this before, so this is not the unit test part, but like I've never cached anonymous delegates, surprisingly. It's not really been a thing I've had to do. So there we go. Say minus equals callback. That was ridiculous. Okay. So once we have that, we're just going to assert that those two things are equal. And that should work. Okay. So we're going to rename this to examine tests. That's a bit. Just call that examine object. Let's go ahead and comment all of this out. Okay. And then we're going to go ahead and say parser.set interacted objects. And then we're going to say examine IO. And then we're going to go ahead and say parser dot receive input. Examine. Okay. This is going to be interesting. I'm curious to see if it works. Just out of curiosity, yep, you're still just a static class, so it should work in theory. Okay. And then at the end here, I can just say destroy, of course not, gameObject.destroy, examine io.gameObject. Okay, that should work in theory. So let's go ahead and pull these in. Let's see what happens when we try this. So that all should compile. Let that compile. Really? You... Huh. Interesting. I wonder why it's not letting me do a play mode test here. Because we're totally doing a Unity test, but it's not being evaluated as such, which is interesting. And then you don't even show up. You're still in editor mode thing, aren't you? Yeah. Weird. Okay, let's go ahead and delete that. Let's go to utility. We're going to say create SOS, text quest, unit tests, test utility. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and create folder prefabs. Let that compile. And in theory, we should be able to run this test after I make a prefab for this. That's going to be interesting. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and say create a new game object. We're going to call this test object examine. Okay, we're going to add an interactive object to this. We're going to go ahead and say create a model module. Not really going to do anything, but I need that there. Okay, let's go ahead and grab this. I'm going to cheat, and we're going to come down here to verbs, make that 1, which means that I actually need to come down here to outputs. We're going to make that 1. Hit normal. Really? Let's see, none, verbs. So this is going to be examine. Success effect is going to be text only. Output type is default. Let's go ahead and go back to here, normal. There we are. Bool. Okay, that's all examined. All right. Let's go ahead and that's pretty much all we really needed. So let's go ahead and let that go. Let's just drag that in down here. We're going to make that our prefabs. Suppose I'll set that to be interactive, not that it really matters. Delete this. We're going to come back to here. We're going to drag this in. Okay, so in theory, save project, we should be able to run this. You failed. Object reference not subject. Right. Okay. Okay. I'm going to set up a scene here. So we're going to go ahead and wow. So that happened. So we're going to go ahead and set this up. I'm going to call this game manager. Okay, we're going to make this a game manager, or TQ game manager. Dictionary is going to be our standard dictionary. Parser commands. So these all up. That we don't really need anything, I don't think. So we're going to go ahead and what else do I need? I need this to be saved under text quest, unit tests, folder, scenes, unit tests. We're going to call this like parser, unit test, scene. Okay. And, oh man, we had a null reference there, right? I think we're okay. So let's try it again. Oh, right. And also, I need to come back to here and edit this. Oh, shoot. Great. So, all right, so we're going to come back to here. I'm going to go ahead and say do header scenes. And this is going to be serialized field tooltip private scene asset. This is going to be parser scene is equal to null scene loaded when testing parser. Okay, so here we are going to come over to here. We're going to say public static string. Yeah, this is going to be fun. So this is going to be parser scene path. I'm going to say get return nothing. And then we're going to say if. Oh, actually, we'll just say if instance.parser scene is equal to null. Then we'll return nothing. Otherwise, we're going to return asset database dot get path for instance dot parser scene. Okay, that should get me that. And that means that in our parser runtime tests, I can come up to here. We're going to say using Unity editor dot scene management. We're going to come down to here, and we're going to say private void open parser scene. We're going to have that be our setup. Do I need to? Okay. And all we're going to do here is we're going to say if scene editor scene manager dot loaded scene. Okay, what are my options here? Is there like a current scene? I thought there was like a loaded scene. Get loaded, get active scene. There we go. Dot name is equal to, and now we gotta come back to here, and we're just gonna go ahead and say public static scene asset. Now let's do string. String parser scene name. Get. We'll say if instance equal to null. Return. Just do that. And then otherwise we're going to say return instance dot parser scene dot name is equal to tq unit test utility dot scene name. So if that's not the case, then we want to load it. So we're going to say editor scene manager dot open scene, and then we're going to say tq unit test utility dot parser scene path. Okay, very straightforward. That should be called every time, and then from there we should be fine. So all that's going to do is when we are done with this parser test, we'll be able to run through and make sure it'll load the proper scene. All right, man, unit testing. It's a huge headache to get started, but at least once it's done, it's pretty useful. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and run this again. Okay, we failed because we have a setup problem, and that's because setup, I think, actually requires something very specific. Hold on, Unity setup test setup attributes. Let's get that done. Let's come over to here. Wow, give me a frickin' old one, Unity. Drive me nuts. Okay, let's see here. Of course you're not giving me anything in the right thing. Setup attribute. Let's try that. You can't give me anything, can you? You're not going to give me anything. Okay, let me think. Tear down will be a bit easier. Tear down. Of course I spelled tear down wrong. Tear down. You've got to be kidding me. Unbelievable. Unity tear down. This will be much faster, I'm sure. Okay. Are called once before each test case. Instead of let's see. Oh. Huh. Do you have to be public? I guess it says invalid signature. I didn't think that they needed to be public, but maybe they do. Give it a second. This, to me, implies that we're going to fail out. I think there's like a 10-second time limit. Maybe 20-second. I might have to manually do this. Really? Because this should not have taken that long. I am... Oh, really? Come on. Work with me here, Unity. It's frozen. Huh. I'm not really sure why this runtime test is not showing up as runtime. Is it because I put it in editor only? If so, that's really stupid. Also, I'm frozen, which is never a good sign. So, cool. All right. Well, that's disappointing, but it's, I guess, as good a place as any to leave off for tonight. So I think that there are some differences in, well, not some, there are definitely differences in 2017's unit testing compared to 2019's. Surprise, surprise. Two whole unit versions are very different from one another. So I don't think that this was running as a coroutine at runtime. I think what was happening here is it was executing once and only waiting for one frame, and then it would just infinitely loop, basically, because we're stuck. We're stuck here. So I'm gonna have to murder this. So cool. That's gonna be a thing for me to figure out. So we went through a bit of the feedback today. Main thing that we did was mostly get that type something set up, and we talked a little bit about setting up interactions for the door. But for that, before I do that, I would like to set up some unit testing for the parser. That way, I can run through, make sure that everything works, and then after I adjust my code in the parser, I'll be able to actually, reliably test my parser every time I make updates. So this is going to be something that I have to just kind of figure out. I'm going to try making this be any platform and just see what happens. What's going on here? So that's as good a place as any to stop for the day. So as always, I want to thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you all next time.